He gets it, zone man all the way.
Yeah, I guess. I mean,
he gets it. He knows.
I don't know if he elicited so much scrutiny and so much ridicule by his comments during the middle of the week that he decided to throw some off speed. But either way, apologies to Gus Bradley. Well, that probably saves the Colts season, because a loss in 0-3 is, 2 games behind the Jaguars. You're in deep trouble. I think really the quarterback injuries were the major takeaway from week 3 besides that. And I mean, you break down the data, and of course, this feels still like we're sort of at the tail end of a weird extended preseason. But passing offenses just aren't dictating the way that games play out anymore. We went through a weird cycle where a couple of years ago, if you weren't upweighting passing efficiency, if you weren't upweighting quarterback play, then you weren't handicapping games correctly. And for about, last half of, or for a lot of last season and for all of this season so far, it's been a much more about, can you correctly price defense? Can you correctly price the running game? So it's a weird new reality in terms of what matters in the NFL. And, for at least for now, I'm nimble here. I'm ready for it to kind of break the other direction. Anything, things may change as the season matures, but right now it feels like a very different handicap.
Hey, Rob, very quickly touch on that. The Colts +6. God bless them. The Kansas City Chiefs, they found a way to lose that game. It took a lot, but they managed to do it.
Yeah, there's such thing as wrong side and right result. I would consider that to be the game. I mean, we did get a little bit of closing line value there overall, but there's just a lot of things that went in favor of the Colts in that game. The opening kickoff got fumbled by the Chiefs, which the Colts scored very easily on. Harrison Butker missing the game ended up being a huge deal for the Chiefs because they missed a field goal, missed an extra point. They went for a fake field goal inside the 20-yard line as well. There was the unsportsmanlike penalty that the Chiefs took on 3rd down where a defensive lineman got into Matt Ryan's face. Just listen, I mean, I'll take the wins however they come. I'm not going to complain about it, but I'm by no means upgrading the Colts for last week's performance against the Chiefs.
Yeah, Matt Ryan is still Matt Ryan. I don't know how they did it. Hey, Sumo, we touched on a JETS, but does Robert Saleh last the season? Obviously, the great redeemer, Zach Wilson, is back this week, so the Jets should be okay. But that defense last week against Joe Burrow, this is Robert Saleh's staple, of course, coming over from the 49ers. The defense, it did not look so good.
Yeah, so he's a defensive coach, a defensive-minded head coach. He's the de facto DC. Their defense was atrocious last season. So this year in the offseason, they got like all the new pieces like DJ Reed, Sauce Gardner, Carl Lawson's coming back. They traded up for a edge player in the 1st round, Jermaine Johnson. They got some safety help. And this defense, after 3 weeks, they rank, I think, 31st in EPA per play. And like everyone kind of knows that Joe Burrow or the Bengals offense in general struggles against too high looks. And Robert Saleh came out and straight up played man coverage, single high coverage, tried to blitz him sometimes. Like exactly the type of defense that you cannot play against Joe Burrow. He played all over the place. There were some mixed results depending on who was charting the tape, but there was like one side who had him playing like below 5 snaps of cover 2 against Joe Burrow. So pretty malpractice in my opinion.
Yeah, it's fun times ahead as a Jets fan again this season. Yeah, good times. All right, we'll get straight into covering 4 marquee matchups. Monday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, and 2 of the early games on Sunday. We'll go to any other Week 4 bets and best bets then to wrap things up. Let's kick things off with the Rams and the 49ers. Monday Night Football. Interesting game. Is it a must-win now for the 49ers? It possibly is. You can back them on the money line at 1.9, the Rams at 2.02. The Rams getting a 1.5-point start on the main point spread at 1.92. 42.5 is the total. That is a low enough total. But Drew Dinsick, what do you make of this one? I think you played the Rams. They were quite impressive without kind of blowing the Cardinals out. That was a great show from Rob as well last week, covering the 3.5. But you like them in this one?
Yeah, and, must win for the Niners, but won't win, in my opinion. I think realistically this, the Rams came into this season very rusty, as one would expect, considering the fact they won the Super Bowl last year. And, what are they really, playing for in the preseason? Didn't really try to exercise any of their advantages in the first couple of matchups, but we're started to see it against that Cardinals team. And I think you're seeing, we have 3 weeks of data. People are starting to make some conclusions about these teams one way or the other. And I think a team like the Rams and a team like the Bengals are a good example, are kind of building into what they ultimately will be and getting closer to what our prior coming into the season expected. So you kind of have to stick to your priors on those teams and like just kind of let them get there, right? And the Niners, I think, are a very different conversation. This is a team where you basically have to throw out your prior almost entirely because, number one, it's Jimmy G in an offense that wasn't designed for him. And number 2, they're missing their most important piece on offense that's not the quarterback in Trent Williams. And this is a huge mismatch for, the Niners now going up against the Rams D-line that has Aaron Donald, one of the top 2 defensive players in the game right now. So it's, to me at least, this is a massive swing in terms of how they want to run offense, how competent this offense is ultimately going to look. There are some questions about injuries, I know, for the Rams, but I would look at what happened last week with the Niners against the Broncos. There were some plays where Deebo Samuel was flat out uncovered, and Jimmy G couldn't kind of read through his progression and sort of kind of operate quarterback in an efficient way and find him. And I think there's a lot of signal here telling me that this Rams offense they're playing cleaner. They're cutting down on turnovers. Cooper Kupp is still just an impossible mismatch, even if your Niners defense otherwise is all world. I have a little bit of concern in the back of my head about the Niners defensive line being able to get after Stafford the way that the Buffalo Bills did, and really kind of stumping this offense. But at the same time, the fact that they are sort of playing into the stronger part of their portions of their team is I think important. And I think the Rams in general still very much the class of the NFC West. And I think as they start to get to their peak, they're going to be the class of the NFC.
Rob, I touched on it there. I know that obviously the 49ers are having major issues offensively with Jimmy G coming back in as well. But that total does look kind of low, especially, I think you're going to touch on this as well, the Rams' issues with the defensive backs currently.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, look at the low totals on the board this week, right? You have Bears, Giants, Fields, and Daniel Jones. You have Steelers, Jets, Trubisky, Zach Wilson. Go across the board at low totals, Carson Wentz, Cooper Rush. And now you have Jimmy G, Matt Stafford in a total that is at 42. And it's not like these teams don't play each other every year a couple times. We have a very good blueprint for what the totals should be in these games. In fact, if we take a look at the last several years, just reading off the totals, most recent to latest, 46, 47, 50, 45, 51, 46.5, 49.5, 49.5, 52. So we're seeing a very, very heavily adjusted total here. Now, you can't dismiss the fact that scoring is down in the NFL this year. That does play a factor into it. But what I particularly like about this matchup is that both teams are top 10 in terms of run efficiency on defense. I think this is a game where both teams are forced to throw the ball at some point or another because they don't have effective running games. And on top of that, the Rams defense is just not generating pressure. They have an 11.4% pressure rate. That's dead last in the league right now. And yes, Trent Williams, I think, is a notable absence. But so far, LA has showed that they cannot get pressure on the opposing quarterback. I think this is a much cleaner game for Jimmy G than it was last week against the Denver Broncos. So I like the over here. I made this 44. I think this is a low number. And again, this is just something where recency tells us that all the matchups in previous years have been much higher than this. I'm not willing to overreact to one Jimmy Garoppolo performance. I think he will get more acclimated in this offense again as the year goes on.
Suma, we touched on it there. It won't take much to get a 42.5 total to get it up, right? You lean that way as well.
Yeah, and surprisingly, there was a little bit of under money earlier today, so I would not be surprised if we might see another push towards the under. This game got bet down from, I think, 43 was the opener at Circa. So, yeah, in general, I completely agree. The main reason why I like this over is, first of all, I anticipated it to be a little bit higher, and I think we really have a lot of recency bias with Jimmy Garoppolo going in. Like this game on Sunday night, in hindsight, I might have underestimated the rust factor for Jimmy because he has not been practicing with the first team all summer. Because the Denver defense played really well. Their pass rush got home. The coverage was pretty good, but there were also a lot of plays where receivers were running wide open and Jimmy just didn't pull the trigger. And for whatever reason, stood too long in the pocket, took some sacks. I think this is something that will get cleaned up or will get better with Jimmy going forward. The offense is still intact. They have all their playmakers. Trent Williams is a loss, absolutely, but as Rob said, not even Aaron Donald can really help this line generating tons of pressure right now. So the combination of that scheme of Kyle Shanahan and the familiarity, because he has to play around that pass rush like twice or three times a season, should, I think, help this team. And the Rams also have some injuries on their secondary, as Rob already mentioned. Troy Hill, IR, John Fuller, their safety has not practiced today. Their second cornerback, David Long, is also DNP today. So the Rams defense, they are not getting enough pressure. They have some injuries in their secondary. I think that the 49ers should be able to put up some points here. And on the other side, I also think that we are talking about a very low total in the low 40s. So either way, let's say this is going to be a coin flip game spread-wise, or we are going to root for Drew's Rams bet, then we are still talking about like a field goal game in the 23-20, 24-20 kind of range. And I think the Rams, despite not being very consistent at times, and the 49ers having a very good defense, I think the Rams have all the talent in the world to somehow touch the number of 20 years. So yeah, I also like that total. I was a little bit surprised that this got this low, to be honest, with these two on paper good offenses. But yeah, I'm also leaning over here.
All right. For those new this season, we're going to count the guys' best bets as our official ROI, but these marquee matchups on a Monday night, a lot of people are betting them. So we want to give you guys the opinion of the guys. And in terms of that, the weigh-in for the team with Drew is Rams money line, which can back at 2.02 at Matchbook currently, and over 42.5 is the lean of both Rob and Suma, and you can back that at the moment at 1.94 at Matchbook.com. Our marquee matchup, primetime game, Chiefs Bucs, current betting at Matchbook.com. It's a pick'em. It's 196 either side on the money line. There is a point spread there if you want to just take the Bucs and a small bit more, just in case of a tie. It does occur as well. And if they lose by one of you or they win by one, you get your money back. 45.5 is the total over 45.5 at 1.93. Rob Pizzola went against the Chiefs last week. You're going to do the exact same this week. What's the case for the Bucs?
Yeah, I am. I mean, always starts with numbers first. And I don't think that there's actually much separating these two teams. Now, obviously, we have the distraction of issues with the Bucs home field. The NFL says that the game's going to go on, so it's very likely that that's going to be played there, not going to be moved to Minneapolis for Monday night or anything like that. But ultimately, it's the Bucs injury report that gets me a little bit excited this week. They obviously get Mike Evans back from suspension. Chris Godwin, Julio Jones both practice in a limited capacity. It's expected they'll have at least one of two back. Donovan Smith, their left tackle, practiced in a limited capacity as well. There's a chance he could play. So I think the Bucs are getting healthier. Ultimately, I like the Tampa Bay defense a lot. Like when we think about what Tampa Bay's defense has done this year, they limited Dak Prescott to 3 points in week one. A few weeks ago, the Saints, granted it's the Saints offense, but they could not generate anything in that game despite numerous opportunities to do so. They limited the Packers to 14 points last week. Green Bay couldn't score in their last 9 possessions a week ago. So ultimately, I think the Bucs defense is a little bit undervalued here. I'm not going to point to like the Tom Brady trends off a loss or anything like that. There might be something to it. There might not be. But ultimately, one thing that's a huge factor for me here right now is that KC's offensive line is allowing pressure at the 3rd worst rate in the league so far this season. The Bucs have the 6th best pressure rate on defense. We saw this as the key to success for the Bucs in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, right? Remember that Super Bowl? Mahomes had no time. He was scrambling nonstop. was one of the biggest blowouts in terms of Super Bowl in recent memory. And I think that they have a lot of the personnel to replicate that again, plus the offensive upside, where I do think Tampa Bay's offense will get back on track going forwards here. I made the Bucs a favorite between the -1.5 to -2 range. I don't see much difference between these two teams if Tampa Bay does get their receivers back. So I'm fine to back the Bucs here. I think that this price is moving towards them for a reason. I still think that there's a way to go here.
Yeah, so when we recorded these podcasts last year on Wednesday, and obviously we've taken the decision to do them on Thursday nights because we can kind of get a better read on the numbers and those injury reports, because Thursday is a really crucial day in comparison to that. So if we're looking at the Bucs, Suma, you get Godwin back potentially, and definitely Mike Evans. That's big, isn't it? Because like Tom Brady doesn't have to zone in and Cole Beasley anymore. We might be able to get him off into the sunset again. So you're just going to wait around that injury report there, Sumit. But are you at all worried that the market will go a bit too much with the Bucs and you might miss out on some of the value right now?
Actually not. I think that right now we are potentially looking at Donovan Smith being back, Julio Jones being back, and I think Godwin is kind of in the 50-50 range. Maybe they will say like he could play, but we will still rest him one more week because he's coming off an ACL tear. He had that hamstring injury immediately, so they might rest him another week. I would not be surprised, but I still think that having Mike Evans and potentially Julio Jones back and their starting left tackle will do wonders for this offense. We saw it in week 1. We now have 3 data points on the Dallas Cowboys defense, which has been pretty good and has performed above expectation. And the Bucs were moving the ball the whole field down against that defense in week 1. They just couldn't execute inside the red zone and had to kick some, had to settle for some field goals. I think this offense is going to look much better than it did for the last 10 or 12 quarters. And the Chiefs defense has been kind of a storyline early in the season, but they also played the Cardinals, where we now know that they cannot move the ball at all on offense. They played the Chargers, who had, without their injuries, tremendous issues on early downs. Then during the game against the Chiefs, they lost Corey Linsley, they lost Trey Pipkins, they were without Keenan Allen. And last week, they played against Matt Ryan, who cannot throw a flat ball anymore. So I think this Chiefs defense might show some regression to the downside against the Bucs offense. I think the Bucs should move the ball. And then on the other side, it's almost impossible to shut down Patrick Mahomes, and I'm not expecting this. But I think, like Rob said, we will see the exact same game plan that we saw in the Super Bowl, because the Bucs are generating pressure with their front four. They're playing very disciplined coverage behind it. And now the Chiefs don't have that speedster Tyreek Hill who can collect major yards after the catch or stretch the coverage kind of, or which allows them to hit more hole shots. So I really think that this is a great matchup for the Bucs. Great in terms of, we are talking about potentially a small favorite that we all like. But despite it being the Chiefs, I think this is a very good spot. And the trend guys have been telling me Tom Brady's 10-0 as an underdog of a straight up loss. This trend will not apply because we are now looking at some -1s and pick a -11 across the board.
Yeah. Did Trendy Rob tell you that one?
It was not Trendy Rob, but it would have been a classic.
You found out somewhere. Okay. Drew, you haven't bet this yet, but I think you're leaning with the guys on the Bucs as well.
Yeah, I agree with both breakdowns. Bucs are the best defense in the NFL. They are healthy outside of Akeem Hicks. Their coverage at full strength is going to have, force tight windows for Mahomes. Mahomes is not playing especially clean. He's got a lot of turnover-worthy plays the last 2 weeks. I think that continues. And realistically, Evans surely back. Godwin, not expecting Godwin. I think one of Gage or Julio Jones will be out there and be fine. And anything that, we're still kind of waiting for the old Bucs offense to reemerge to a degree. I don't think they can continue to realistically can put the ball in the hands of Lenny Fournette. Like, it's over. That experiment is over. Donovan Smith, I would expect is going to be back. Pass protection should be a little bit better. There's really not a lot about the Chiefs defense that's unique or scares you. And so I think ultimately this is Bucs or pass. Totals probably a little bit low considering there's not really going to be any weather at all here. And I would have played the Bucs earlier this week if we had a little bit more certainty that the game was going to be in Tampa, and that, I don't have a great feel about how their week of practice has gone. Like there's been some disruption surely because of the weather. So, for me, at this point it is Bucs, and I would expect them to close small favorite.
All right. The Bucs is the consensus there, 1.96. That is a pick 'em currently, but as Drew said, the money is coming for them currently. Probably one of the games of the weekend for me, Bills and Ravens, early kickoff, which is good for us on this side of the Atlantic, of course, on Sunday night. You come back, the Bills here 168, the Ravens at 2.38. Ravens getting a 3-point start at 1.97. You can back the Bills laying 3 at even money. 51 is the total, slightly shade towards the over there at 192. Suma, I think you lean Bills here, but obviously, look, we're in the we're definitely in the season of injury updates and just constantly watching this, even in game at the moment. I presume there's a few doubts there, obviously, with the Bills, but a few guys I could get back to. But you're liking the Bills anyway in this one.
Yes, I'm monitoring that injury report for today. You certainly want Jordan Poyer in because they were playing with 2 backup safeties last week. They have signed Xavier Rhodes off the street. I actually don't even know whether he's going to play this Sunday. Maybe he's going to be out there for a few snaps. Dane Jackson, he was practicing yesterday, kind of a miracle, to be honest, after that scary neck injury. And everything else, I mean, they have some injuries along the offensive line, but I think they should be fine in that department. The Ravens lost Michael Pierce. Justin Houston is dealing with a groin injury. He was DNP again today, so he might not suit up. I think the Bills will have matchup advantages in the trenches on both sides of the ball. Ronnie Stanley might be back, which will be very huge for the Ravens. First game back. No clue whether he's going to be at 100%, but he's certainly going to be better than their 4th string tackle from last week, which was very brutal. I think that was the 4th round rookie, actually. And the Bills, I think they can move the ball on this Ravens defense. Gabriel Davis will most likely be back and be close to being 100%. Stephon Diggs, Jake Kummerow will be out, but I think they just have the passing game that really fits well when attacking this Ravens secondary. Kyle Hamilton, he made so many mistakes in coverage against the Dolphins that they only played him 25% of the snaps against the Patriots last week. He had that fumble late, but certainly I'm not really sold on this Ravens defense, especially their secondary at all. And I think we were all so high on the Bills, and just because they lost like 19-21 against the Dolphins with some crazy variance in some key situations, I did not downgrade them at all. I think their offense should roll here. They could easily approach the 27-30 point range. And then it will be very interesting to see whether MVP candidate Lamar Jackson will be able to hang on. I mean, Lamar Jackson is playing incredibly well, really awesome, but they have no run game whatsoever. It's all about him. He is accounting for 93% of all Ravens offensive yards, accounting for all 12 touchdowns. Rashad Bateman is playing really well, but what's also interesting is that the Ravens played 3 defenses that played tons of single high, cover 1, cover 0 coverages, etc. in the Dolphins, in the Jets in week 1, and also the Patriots, who played more of a traditional single high defense. And now they're going to face the Buffalo Bills, who don't blitz at all, play like cover 2 almost exclusively, and have the D-line to consistently get pressure. I think the Bills have I think top 5 pressure rate at least in the league right now, and they're getting this without blitzing at all. And the Ravens don't have a great pass blocking offensive line, even if Ronnie Stanley comes back. So this is going to be a completely different style of defense that Lamar Jackson is going to face. And I'm not sure that he can bring his A+ game the same way he did over the first 3 weeks. And if he cannot bring his A+ game and only is his A or A- game, I think it will be very tough to beat this Bills team.
Yeah, and Drew, he's been bringing the A+ game, hasn't he? I mean, this is the guy who can't get that contract that he wanted in the offseason, and he's making them eat their words, and they're going to actually probably end up paying more, as it turns out now, after this.
Yeah, he's going to end up getting compensated so well that they're going to have an offense that probably looks a lot like their current offense because they're not going to be able to afford anyone else. But that said, if it works, and it has been. All told, market is with me on this for both side and total. I took the 3.5s with the Ravens. I think that this game is pretty high likelihood to end 3 either way. I'm on under 55 here because in reality, I think I'll assume his points are fair. But I think those largely capture sort of a neutral game as opposed to a game where the Bills are coming off of a really, really difficult travel spot and just in general a very, very physical and and damaging, fatigue inducing contest against the Dolphins. Turn around and they have to travel again now to Baltimore. So the second road game in a row early in the season after what they just went through. I think that is going to be enough to just kind of throw a little bit of a monkey wrench in terms of what Buffalo wants to do. Buffalo is pretty one-dimensional offensively right now. Everybody knows this. Ravens relatively well-coached team, a lot of savvy veterans. They get beat by speed. In fact, speed eats them absolutely alive. But I think you're going to see a little bit of a step slow for a lot of these skill position players who are coming off of that Miami game where things were so brutal. The Bills absolutely did not deserve to lose last week. They probably should have covered that game. But I think this is a difficult spot for them now to turn around on after that what we saw. The major. I guess maybe I'm hopeful to a degree that we see a low scoring Ravens win here. Just because that would set up a fun sort of anchor point for a potential playoff matchup between these two teams. Because again, at Buffalo at full strength defensively and in a neutral situation for their offense should absolutely torch these guys. And I hope we see that in January. I would love to be out, because they, if they're 100%, they're scoring 40 points on this defense. This defense is not especially good. They're old, they're slow, and they're dealing with a bunch of injuries still. So ultimately, I'm hopeful we see a lower scoring game and either a Bills narrow win or a Ravens win, and then that sets us up for for a fun opportunity in the playoffs. But still should be a very important and fun game to watch. I think whichever quarterback ultimately wins this game is your MVP favorite between now and probably Thanksgiving. And then, realistically, Ravens are going to be in a dogfight with the Bengals, in my opinion, for the AFC North. Bills, we know, are going to be in a dogfight with the Dolphins for the AFC East, but I still think this is a huge high leverage game for both of these teams potentially getting a 1 seed in the playoffs. So this is a fun one. Only other thing I can add to this and why I think there's a little bit of an edge to the Ravens side of things. Last time we saw these two teams play, Les Frazier had just an unbelievably good game plan for Lamar Jackson. It was perfect. Yeah. He was basically like, hey, I dare you to do, to pass it 15 yards down the sidelines, hit your receivers in stride. We'll give you that. But anything over the middle, we're going to use our dynamic safeties and we're going to intercept you. We're going to frustrate you. We're going to spy on you. We're not going to let you really break the pocket and get it on the ground. And you saw a pretty bad performance out of Lamar in that spot. Lamar has answered all of those questions so far this season that he can make that pass now. So if Les Frazier walks into this game with that game plan and says, I dare you to do that, I think he's going to do it. And so there's in the back of my head a possibility that is sort of the way that this could play out in terms of matchup here. But either way, the Ravens offense has to be upgraded relative to what I think market and certainly my expectations were for them coming into this season. But that said, this still sets up well for sort of a little bit of a tighter contest, a little bit more ball control than what we saw the Ravens Patriots game, surely. I think this is going to be a really, pretty tight, pretty awesome game.
Rob, I don't know if you agree with this, but look, it's an intriguing matchup. But I think we kind of know what the Bills are, right? With everyone fit and ready. I think we're going to learn a lot more about the Ravens in this one. Agree? Disagree?
Yeah, potentially. I think it's a good measuring stick for the Ravens. You do have to take into account all the Bills' injuries, of course. So it's not the Bills with their full complement of weapons, especially on defense, and Gabe Davis questionable on the offensive side of the ball as well. But for me, it's a small lean to the Bills in this game. I just think that there's more upside with them right now. A possibility to get Jordan Poyer back in the secondary. I think overall, last week's games were a little bit misleading. So I watched both Bills and Dolphins and Ravens Patriots in full on Monday. I thought the Patriots gave the Ravens a pretty good battle. There was a pretty drastic play in that game where Kyle Hamilton chased down Nelson Aguilar from behind, punched the ball out for a fumble that I think drastically swung that game, or else New England was moving the ball rather consistently on Baltimore. And I do have some hesitation with the Ravens defense overall. I wonder if they will just improve going forwards now that all their cornerbacks are healthy. But overall, to me, it's been a unit that just does not resemble the Ravens defense of years past. The Bills, to me, a lot of their loss last week was just self-imposed mistakes. Nothing that really Miami did. They held the ball for a ton. Just seemed to be one of those games where they did a lot of right and just didn't get the right result. It's a very challenging handicap for me because there's so much going on with both of these teams right now. It just subjectively feels like there's a little bit more upside with Buffalo. And I honestly just love the idea of getting Buffalo in small favorite ranges because I think that they're the best team in the league, even when injured. I think they just have such a good coaching staff. Like having so many defensive players injured against a Miami team that has all these explosive weapons and being able to keep them off the field for the vast majority of the game and not allow them to do much when they're on the field, I think is just a testament to the coaching staff. One last thing that I find just to be worth mentioning, but very weird. Typically speaking, if you look at Lamar Jackson's entire career, when he's been blitzed, his passing grade has been very low. When he's not blitzed, his passing grade has been very high. It's been the complete opposite of that this year. I don't know what's up with that. I don't know if it'll balance out going forwards. The only reason I note that is that the Bills do not blitz. They're the least blitz-heavy team in the NFL so far this season. And if we look at Pro Football Focus player grades so far this year, Lamar Jackson, when he is blitzed, 85.2 passing grade. When he's not blitzed, 64.6. So it's been quite a drop-off when he's faced coverage. That's surprising to me. I don't know if it'll continue. This is a long-winded way of saying I don't really love the game, but I do lean slightly to the Bills.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, there doesn't seem to be a consensus there, so we will move on. But it's going to be an intriguing one, definitely one to watch. And a team one to watch at the moment, they're the Jacksonville Jaguars, were essentially probably the best team in the AFC South. We wouldn't be saying that last year.
You were going to say AFC.
AFC, yeah. What's that?
This isn't a gag, I think.
Yeah, over the AFC. Yeah. AFC, Bills, Chiefs, all that, they're better than all of them. But hell, it's the big difference to last year under the Urban Meyer regime. Current betting, as we have on matchbook.com, they headed to Philly to take on, the really informed Eagles in the NFC, the best of the NFC. Potentially 3.35. You can back Jacksonville here. You can back them plus 6.5 at 1.95. You can get 7 at 1.85. 46.5 is the total shade towards the under 193. Suma, Doug Peterson revenge game. Kitchen sink kind of job here. A lot of plays coming at him. But yeah, the Trevor Lawrence as well just looks a different player.
Yes, I mean, going from Urban Meyer to what we saw from Doug Peterson and this whole team over the first 3 weeks, I cannot remember such a drastic change in how a team is looking as an on-field product. I really cannot remember. Like their offense, they did not sign the greatest elite playmakers. They got Christian Kirk, they got Evan Ingram, they got Zay Jones, who looked like he would never play another snap in 2018 with the Bills. They still have like 32-year-old Marvin Jones. The offensive line is not great, and they still rank, I think, third on EPA per play on early down, second in success rate. Doug Peterson is really giving Trevor Lawrence so many options. it really feels like they know how to attack opposing defenses, sorry. And Trevor Lawrence, I mean, tape guys have always said that, yes, he made many mistakes, but all the stable stuff was still there, like moving in the pocket, etc., avoiding yes, avoiding pressure, extending plays, etc. And now you get all these great skill sets, all these strength, combined with a coach who absolutely knows what he's doing. And I really adjusted my prior on the Jaguars because I did not expect them to be that good that early. And also, I don't want to talk too much about defensive performance because it's very noisy and it's very volatile and it's hard to predict. But I also like how the front seven is playing. Their DC, whose name I forgot right now, is coming from the Todd Bowles coaching tree. Highly big emphasis on getting the front seven, the front four rolling, lots of stunts. They're calling lots of blitzes with Devin Lloyd blitzing from the second level. Trevin Walker, he's not looking great or even shaped as a pass rusher, but he's doing some really good stuff in the run game and setting up lanes for other guys. Their run defense ranks, I think, second EPA per play and first in success rate by a mile over the first couple of weeks. And while I don't think that their defense has any shot at containing this Eagles offense, which is very special for 4 quarters, I think their run defense and their front seven might disrupt the Eagles' run game just a little bit to stay longer in the game. I think their offense, and I will say this is not a lean against the Eagles. It's more a lean of the Jaguars. And with how this team is looking, are getting 7 points here, potentially. It's currently 6.5. I would be very interested in the Jags if they would catch 7 at some point. We have always seen the Eagles getting a lot of attention later in the week. Maybe we will get to a 7, which would make it very interesting for me. But what I want to say is the Jaguars, they also have some weapons like Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, and their running backs to feed them over the middle of the field. That's also an area where the Eagles are defensively not that great. They don't have the greatest linebackers, greatest safeties in coverage. So this is something that Doug Peterson might want to attack. Overall, the Eagles are a great team. They look like clear front runners for the number 1 seed in the NFC. But I think the Jaguars are so good right now that they could hang in this game if you can get a late +7 ticket.
Yeah, and Drew, you think the Jags will hang in this game, getting the points. But it is a tricky travel situation, isn't it? Coming back from LA, and obviously you've got what's going on in Florida. I'm not totally sure if they've just went directly to Philadelphia. You might know more about that, but there is a lot of travel in the last week or two for this Jags unit.
Yeah, not a great spot. Otherwise, this is like an easy bet of the week for me for the Jags. 6.5 is a lot of points, and there's really not a ton that separates sort of the good teams in the NFL right now. And these are both good teams. I mean, market's still light on the Jags somehow, even though, and it's crazy that this happened because last week they absolutely took apart the Chargers. They took them apart offensively and defensively. And people, you want to blame Herbert's injury on that? I don't know if you can't hang it on all of that. Like a lot of that was Jags just coming in with an absolutely elite game plan and executing it to perfection.
Yeah.
And so, the fact that there's a little bit of hesitancy here in the market to kind of buy how good this team potentially is in a year where we have no real good no good teams in the NFL is surprising. Some of that may just be enthusiasm about the Eagles, I guess, but the Eagles so far this year have just, they've been able to get it done playing against the likes of Goff and Cousins and Wentz. And Lawrence, for what it's worth, is kind of in an elite tier right now in terms of quarterback performance. There's really only 6 guys that stand out in terms of how well they've played, and he's one of them. I think the fact that they have complementary offense where they're getting a lot out of their running game is important. The offensive line has taken a meaningful step forward, even though those guys aren't the most talented guys in the NFL. And as Suma noted, the defense is good and complementary as well. Really solid pass rush. Now that's going to get tested because the Eagles have a top 3 offensive line, maybe a top 1. But this is a really cool matchup of strength on strength. I'm stuck a little bit here because these are two teams that I put a ton of equity into in the futures markets before the season started. And a Jags win here hurts some positions that I have relative to the Eagles, like getting the 1 seed and Sirianni being coach of the year. Whereas an Eagles win, and that really kind of throws a little bit of cold water on some future positions I have for Jags. So, I think 6.5 is too much. The Jags have a difficult travel spot, as you mentioned, because not only did they go across country last week to play the Chargers, and that they have to now go up to Philadelphia, but their entire week of preparation has been disrupted by the hurricane, on top of the fact that it's a really young team, and to the degree that they're reading their own press clippings all week, thinking about how great they played against the Chargers, you get a little bit nervous backing a team in that sort of kind of motivational low potentially. But again, because most of the kind of mainstream coverage was about the Chargers underperforming more than really giving the Jags credit, maybe we get to continue to capture a little bit of value still on this Jaguars team. My difference in ratings between the Eagles and the Jags is not a lot, even though I like the Eagles a ton, and I think they probably get the 1 seed in the NFC. I think this should be about a 3.5 point game in a neutral situation, give a little bit of an edge to the Eagles because of situational advantage, and maybe it's 4.5. But either way, I think taking the points with Jags makes sense to me in this spot.
Yeah, it's interesting, Rob. I did a Twitter space with Brad Allen around the time you were doing your periscopes on Sunday, and we were talking about that Jags line. They're not getting a lot of respect in the marketplace at all, because the way it was trending, if there was no Justin Herbert, the Chargers were still going to go off as favorites, which kind of, I know everything is hindsighted looking back in the week, but that doesn't make sense. But one thing about market respect, I've looked at it in Matchbook, a lot of the sharper players haven't latched onto this Eagles team yet. And I think a lot of obviously doubt over Jalen Hurts, but that roster, pound for pound, if you look down through the tiers, there aren't too many better than them.
I agree. I mean, I think the Eagles have the perfect recipe to be a winner in the NFL because they have a quarterback that's good on a rookie deal, and they've been able to stack the rest of their roster top to bottom with all of these great players. And we see it time and time again. If you can find a quarterback on a rookie deal, then you have a lot of money to spend elsewhere. I have a larger gap between these two teams than Suma and Drew. I still have concerns about Jacksonville. So I was high on them going into the year. I think as a lot of people were. I think if we take a step back at their 3 games this season, I view them in a different light than these guys do. So they lost to the Commanders outright. I think that's almost inexcusable. They really couldn't get a ton of pressure in that game. Carson Wentz went off against them in the second half. I think that is certainly a strike against them in terms of some concerns. I look at back-to-back weeks here where I think that the injuries have worked very favorably in Jacksonville's favor. So we look at Indianapolis without 2 of their top 3 receivers, couldn't really generate much offensively. That was not a game where the Jags offense had to be great because the Colts, just couldn't score. And then last week, it's just pretty much every key player that could be hurt for the Chargers was either hurt before the game or got hurt during the game. With Justin Herbert, obviously, but Keenan Allen, Corey Linsley, Rashawn Slater, Joey Bosa, J.C. Jackson. We're talking about a massive difference between what that Chargers team was last week and the Chargers team that we expected going into the year. I just think that there's a massive range on what Jacksonville can actually be. I'm not saying that the Jags can't be good right now, but I'm pumping the brakes on them. Whereas I think Philadelphia, to me, the manner in which they are beating other teams, the Washington game last week was as big a destruction as you'll see in the NFL this season, in terms of at one point in the game, the Eagles were at 300 passing yards and the Commanders were still at negatives at that point in the game. So I think personally, the team that the market has not caught up on yet is Philadelphia. I think by end of season, we might start to see them getting priced even higher and higher than they are now. So I think 7 is a fair price in this game. Personally, I'm leaning a little bit more to the Eagles than I am to the Jags. That's not to say the Jags can't be good, but I still have reservations on them. And I think that if we just take a step back and look at their first 3 games, they're not really as impressive as most people think they are.
Drew, wrap this one up for us.
Yeah, I mean, this is your Super Bowl preview as far as I can tell you. I agree with Rob. The Eagles best in the in seriousness, the other reason to take the points here, because I agree with Rob's points, like the Jags, there are some flags, surely. Young team, inconsistency is possible. But even if this is an Eagles kind of dictate game state here, Jags coming in the back door is very, very real. They can defend the run. They're going to get opportunities. Trevor Lawrence is carving the part of the field where the Eagles may be a bit soft in that kind of 15, 25-yard range, particularly in the middle of the field, attacking the linebackers. So there's even if this is the thesis is correct that the Eagles are for real, a real contender, and the Jags are still a step below, a tier below, I think the Eagles can get in a backdoor here, considering how many points you're getting.
Yeah, it's a fascinating game. There isn't enough of a consensus to get us there for a selection. But again, if you're watching this pod or listening to this pod, you'll have your own mind made up. It's hopefully one of the guys' arguments will have tipped you over the edge. Just before we get on to any other bets and best bets, I do see a lot of people in the YouTube chat. We enjoy the interactions, just so we don't bring them up on the screen all the time. We're just trying to get through and get these guys on video. Please give us a thumbs up, click the subscribe button. It does help. That's all I'm ever going to ask of you guys. I'm never going to put it behind the paywall or anyone in Matchbook. So, yeah, please just give us a thumbs up, click the subscribe button. Any other bets for week 4? Drew Dinsick, Packers, laying 9.5. Home against Page. You're obviously not worried about Brian Hoyer coming in here and doing a job. So,
this is a small bet for me, and it's taken me a while to get here because I have a lot of there, in the range of outcomes in the distribution. There's a lot of Packers win by 7, 10, and kind of 6 in that kind of one score range. But the Patriots, I have with Brian Hoyer, I think the Patriots are the 32nd best team in the NFL. I would make the Jets a small favorite over them on a neutral field. I have an exceptionally low expectation of Brian Hoyer because the last time I had to rate him for a game was back in 2020 when he started against the Chiefs, and I had a very low rating for him in that spot, and he underachieved even. I think the fact that the Patriots are even going to him is a head scratcher. Everything about the Patriots beyond the quarterback position, if this becomes like okay, well, we're going to get it done on the ground. Okay. You can move the ball between the 20s, but I don't see them succeeding in the red zone. And the Packers, on the other hand, do feel like they're building a little bit more towards their prior ultimately from the preseason. And this should be a pretty clean win for them at home. Not my favorite play on the card overall, but certainly one where I think the market is a little light in terms of downgrading the Patriots. I would have made this game closer to 13. At least that's where I would need to be to even be considering Patriots in this spot.
Yeah, and this whole Matt Patricia as an offense coordinator, or whatever the hell he's doing over there, that's not really working either. Rob Pizzola, Broncos +2.5 at the Raiders, 197. Raiders a whole lot of disappointing again last week, wasn't it? I mean, I know I've heard a few people saying it's going to come good, but I don't know, there's something not right there.
Yeah, the Raiders have, I think, a pretty dire combination of bad offensive line and bad secondary, which it's very hard to win in the NFL in this day and age, especially with injuries in the secondary as well. This line is suggesting that Las Vegas is better than Denver on a neutral field, which I absolutely disagree with. I think some people may be downgrading the Broncos because they played an ugly game on Monday Night Football. They won as an underdog against a very good 49ers team. I don't care the manner in which they won. I get that the offense didn't look great, but defensively speaking, the Broncos have been very good this year. So do not agree with the price at all. I like the Broncos +2.5 here.
Sully's muted, but I think Rob should just play the money line.
Wouldn't mind it flashed up on the screen as well. Mike is muted. It takes a second or two. Sommer, you're playing the London game for the European viewers. Early kickoff on Sunday. I like this one too. I'm surprised at this. Vikings -2.5, 188 at the Saints. And look, Jameis didn't look right last week. He's got serious issues here potentially too with the back. I don't think half of the information is out there, the correct information. So you're happy to lay the -2.5 for the Vikings.
Yeah, I am, and I am around -3, and then we still have that injury variance going for the Vikings, in my opinion,
Yeah.
because Jameis has not practiced 2 days in a row. He has not looked good at all. He's dealing with several injuries. He's getting crushed in the pocket, throwing so many balls for whatever reason into double coverage, triple coverage. He's not really moving around very well. So I'm either getting Andy Dalton or I'm getting James Winston on a bad back and a bad ankle coming off an ACL, who's really not been looking very good. And on the other side, Kirk Cousins. Rob might do the primetime joke now, but it's also Kirk Cousins
It's
who's
only
facing.
prime time UK, mate. Don't worry about it. We're in the day. It's grand.
but it's also Kirk Cousins without a lot of pressure with clean pockets is a lot better than Kirk Cousins against the Eagles and under constant duress. And the Saints defensive line, I mean, I don't know what's going on there. I cannot explain it, but they rank 32nd in PFF's pass rushing grade. They cannot get pressure. I think their pressure rate is somewhere around 11% or something. It's really, really ugly. They cannot get pressure at all. They had to blitz Baker Mayfield to death, which was a very good strategy, but they cannot get a lot of pressure with rushing 4. And I think if you cannot do this, Kirk Cousins will have some time. He's a very, very good passer when he's got time. And Dalvin Cook, I had him actually out going into the week, and all of a sudden he puts on a full practice today. So Vikings should be relatively healthy. Saints are not. Saints might go with Andy Dalton or half Jameis, and I'm happily taking the under a field goal spread on a neutral field.
Yeah, I kind of like the team total for the Vikings is currently 23.5 over. But the problem is if they get ahead, they're not going to just want to throw points on the board. Who knows though? That offense does when it gets going, it gets going. All right, best bets time. We've had 9 best bets, obviously, through 3 weeks, 7 winners so far. Drew, we covered it already, but for those who skipped ahead, shame on them. The Rams money line 2.02 to beat the 49ers. Give me a quick recap of why this is the selection for you.
Yeah, so I would have made this Rams small favorite here. A lot of my edges coming from the expectation that the offensive line, we know the interior of the offensive line is not as good as it has been in years past. The rushing game, as a result, has been utterly, much less effective for the Niners. And for those reasons, the loss of Trent Williams hurts that much more. Rams, to me at least, are building more towards their preseason prior, which is, one of the better teams in the NFC.
All right, Rob Pizzola, for those again, skipping ahead, we covered as well, Bucs 196 to beat the Chiefs.
Yeah, just never agreed with this price. Honestly, I think there's a lot of upside in betting the Bucs based off of their injury report right now, with the likelihood that they'll get at least one of 2 back in terms of Julio Jones and Chris Godwin. Left tackle Donovan Smith practicing. Ultimately, though, a lot of people fixated on the Bucs offense. I'm focused on their defense, which has been extremely good this year. Top 5 across the board in pretty much every metric that you could hope for defensively. They're very good at getting pressures. The Kansas City offensive line, the 3rd worst pressure rate in the entire league. I do see this game unfolding very similarly to the Super Bowl a couple years ago, where Patrick Mahomes is under a lot of pressure. Tom Brady is able to get the ball out quickly to his receivers. So I just never really agreed with this price. I like the Tampa Bay Bucs. I think they're a solid bet this week.
All right, Suma, Rob covered already. You're taking a different number in the Broncos. You can get them +3, 187 at the Raiders. Same line of thinking, I'm presuming.
They're +3 at Matchbook. That's pretty. That's a very cool number. Yeah, I would have taken them at 2.5 at the very low juice. But I mean, everything that Rob has said, there's the potential. I mean, Rock Ya-Sin had a limited practice yesterday, but the Raiders secondary is very depleted, and their 2 edge rushers alone won't get them home, in my opinion. There's the scenario in which there's a banged up Rock Ya-Sin, Sam Webb, Amigo Robertson, and someone from the practice squad is going to start in their secondary at cornerback. And for as bad as the Broncos offense has looked over the past two weeks, the Niners had a great defense and the Raiders have not. I think this is a very good game to get right back on the track for the Broncos offense, even though they might not light the world on fire. I think they should be able to run the ball here. I think they will have a few plays with open grass when throwing the ball down the field. And on the other side, I'm not really sold out on the Raiders offense that could still be without Hunter Renfrow. He has been, he was DNP yesterday with his concussion, second week in a row, looks iffy to play. And Devontae Adams is great, but it's really weird. I cannot really explain it. Like, the Packers had Devontae Adams as their focal point of the offense, and the Raiders are just trying to force feed him. And he has a catch rate of like 50% on the season. So Darren Waller had lots of mental errors last week. And this offense really comes down right now to, can Derek Carr consistently make all the throws to Devontae Adams, Darren Waller, and Mac Hollins down the field? Because their offensive line should get crushed by the Broncos, who are looking to have a really, really good pass rush with Randy Gregory and Bradley Chubb. Overall, I think this is a very good matchup for the Broncos. I don't think the line should be 2.5. I'm much, much closer to a pick'em. Going to the season, I had the Broncos as slight favorites over the Raiders on a neutral field, and the first 3 weeks of the Raiders have not made me adjust this matchup too far to the point where I could get to a plus 2.5.
Yeah, I'm with you. This whole Derek Carr, Fresno State thing with Devontae Adams, it's a bit messed up. I don't know what the story is there. Just before we wrap up today, if you guys allow me a minute or two, just to give a bit of personal news. This will be my last time hosting the Matchbook NFL podcast. I'm moving on to pastures new in the coming weeks, but fear not, the guys will remain. Rob, Drew, Sommer. You're not coming with me. Daniel Hussey, who is our producer, and you'll know if you follow our Champions League or soccer podcasts, he is the host there. He's going to step in and he'll do a terrific job. But guys, just for myself, just been great working with you the last couple of years. One of the things I think that we've tried to bring at Matchbook, especially with the NFL content, that I have found on this side of the Atlantic, is that people dumb it down for the audience. I don't think we've ever done that. So hopefully those in the US watching or listening, they're enjoying it as well. It's probably one of the better NFL podcasts out there. And I will be following you guys along. And also to our viewers and our audience in general, the interactions we've had in social the last couple of years, and myself personally, thanks a million for all that. Very much appreciated. But it's farewell for now, and I'll be following you guys. So keep picking those winners, gentlemen. Rob, Drew, Suma. I'll be back at the usual time for week 5. Guys, been a pleasure. Daniel steps in, like I said, next week. And it's goodbye from me for now. Best of luck with your bets this weekend, guys. Take care.